So I would like to welcome our guest speaker, Ilko Minev, who was born and grew up in Sofia, Bulgaria, where he received his degree in German studies. Before immigrating to Brazil, he studied economics in Belgium, where he sought political asylum as a dissident and refugee from communist regime. After spending time in Sao Paulo, he moved to Manaus, where he quite literally fell in love and put down roots. There, he made a career as a business executive and served as honorary consul for the Netherlands for more than 30 years. He's married and he has two children and two grandchildren. So please help me welcome Ilko Minev.
I, it's pleasure meeting you. I see that there are people from several places, and it's really a pleasure to be able to tell a little of my story and also the story of the Jewish population of Bulgaria, uh, which is about the same story of, or very similar to the Jewish from the Ottoman Empire that was in all northern Africa, in parts of the Middle East, Greece, Macedonia, and so on. Uh, Mark told quite exact story of my life, but to make things more understandable, I will try to tell you the story of how Jewish came to the Balkans and to the Ottoman Empire first, and then to the Balkans. Uh, they actually came a long time before the Sephardic history started. First evidence that Jews lived in what is now Bulgaria date from the 2nd century after Christ. And it is very, many believe that there were Jewish in what Bulgaria is now, 100 or 200 years before that. It is open. This question is open to speculation, but some believe that the earliest Jews moved to the Balkans after the destruction of the first temple. Others suggest that Jews arrived as a result of Alexander the Great conquests. And the Roman conquest of the Balkans played a very important role, settling Jews throughout the area, especially after the fall of Jerusalem and also after the Bar Kokhba revolt, which happened 130 years after Christ. It was at the time a very common practice that Jews were accompanying the legions, the Roman legions, and they served as traders, as they provided supplements and food to the army. This Jewish population was called Romaniotes at the time, because they were in one or another way linked to Rome. There is a very antique synagogue in Philippopolis, and this city is known today as Plovdiv, which was very famous for the splendid floor, mosaic floor. It was constructed in the 3rd century, and after that it was destroyed and rebuilt and refurbished several times. It is interesting. It is interesting for those who are interested in the story that the first Slavic alphabet, uh, uh, later famous as Cyrillic, was created by two Greek monks uh, who were fluent in Greek, Latin, and apparently in Hebrew. Uh, we can, some Hebrew letters or signs are used until today. For instance, they borrowed from Hebrew, shin is known as sh in Bulgarian, and tseit is known as ts, is a different pronunciation. What is known that in the 10th century, Bulgaria had a fair number of Jewish communities known as Vidin, Tarnovo, Nikopol, and other cities in the 10th century already had a significant Jewish population, and Tarnovo had a Jewish quarter, which is in the 10th century. It was really quite long time before the Jewish escaped from Spain, and we have the population that is Sephardic. In the 14th century, and this is a very curious fact, a Jewish woman sat on the Bulgarian throne as a queen. Sarah, the story tells, was so beautiful that the king fell in love with her, divorced his wife, and married her. Well, she converted to the to Christianism, and was very influential for many years. She adopted the name of Theodora, is known as Sarah Theodora, and her son, Ivan Shishman, was the last Bulgarian king before the Ottoman Empire came and conquered the Balkans. This happened in 1393, which means that it was about 100 years before the disaster in Jewish life that happened when Ferdinand and Isabella in the late 15th century expelled the Jews from the Iberian Peninsula. It is today known that about 100,000 Jews reached the Ottoman Empire, and it was a big luck for the Ottoman Empire that there were at once available doctors and other scientists for the time, traders and competent tradesmen and people with specific skills that were in short supply in Turkey or in the Ottoman Empire. So the origin of the Bulgarian Jewish comes from different sources. The Romaniots, they called the ones who came with the Romans. but then also came from Central Europe. Some Ashkenazis came to Bulgaria, and after that, uh, there were part of those 100,000 Jews who came to Bulgaria and became so important they absorbed the other Jewish, and this is how the Sephardic community of Bulgaria was formed. It was in the beginning part of Turkey, of the Ottoman Empire, and Bulgaria became a free country in 1878. And it is known that at that time there were 10,000 Jews in the country. The first chief rabbi was Gabriel Almosino. Uh, After that, another rather famous rabbi was Rabbi Bakish. What happened is that with the disappearance of the Ottoman Empire, the economic life became quite limited because the Ottoman Empire was a huge market, and now at once the Jews who were known as traders had a much smaller area of influence, and it became a little some kind of economic shock. With a time, so the Bulgarian Jewish population was mostly made out of small traders, some doctors, artisans, and rich bankers and industrials were exception. But this helped in a way to become quite popular in Bulgaria. This is why there were no pogroms in Bulgaria until the late 1930s, when Bulgaria became ally of Germany. And for bad luck of the Jewish population, Bulgaria adopted laws that were similar to the German law, which was limiting the freedom of individuals, and the Jewish population was prohibited to live and work in the big cities, and it became quite difficult. One thing is, and every one you ask, what is the most important thing that you believe happened at that time, is that Bulgaria, in one or another way, saved the lives of 48,000 Jews who were Bulgarian Jews. This is the bright side. There is a dark side too. For different reasons, Bulgaria contributed to the German effort to send the Jewish population to Poland and to the concentration camps. And this was in case of the non-Bulgarian Jewish. Bulgaria was occupying at the time one part of Greece and Macedonia. So 11,000 Jewish men and women were delivered to Germany and went to Poland. This is the dark side. Bulgaria joined in 1941 the Axis, and it adopted the laws of Nuremberg, exactly the same laws that Germans had. So there is a beautiful story saving 48,000 people, and there is a very sad story of delivering 11,000 Jews from Thrace and Macedonia and Greece to Germany. There is, so it depends on with whom you speak. One will say Bulgaria was wonderful, and some others will say, well, Bulgaria was not so wonderful. But the fact is that 48,000 lives were saved. In labor camps, the men went, where extermination was not the case, differently than in Poland or Germany. When after the Second War, Bulgaria became communist country, and a bigger part of the survivors left to Israel. Less than 4,000 left in Bulgaria. My part of my family was among these 4,000, and the situation was rather bad in a communist country, but it became much worse after the Six-Day War, when the communist countries took they were on the side of the Arab countries, and the official media was announcing that Israel was being destroyed, and victories of the Arab armies and so on. And people were coming to us, neighbors, to tell us that they are sorry, you know. If you open at the time television or radio or read the newspaper, you would think that Israel was finishing. We knew better because we were listening to the radio in French, German, or English, BBC or the Voice of America, but we couldn't tell them that the story was different. It was one of the funniest things happened then. After 6 days of victories, at once the glorious Arab armies surrendered. And this was the beginning of a very big shock between the Jewish population, small Jewish population, and the communist government. And shortly after that, I was accused for several reasons that I'm a dissident and this and that. A friend of mine went to prison. I had the chance, and I escaped from Bulgaria to Belgium and later to Brazil. And here I am to tell the story. So this is in few words the story of the Jewish population of Bulgaria. One thing is important to mention, that many artists, musicians, are artists of all kinds, painters and writers that are famous in Bulgaria are of Jewish origin. And today I'm friend with some of them. Others passed away, but the Bulgarian culture has some important influence from Jewish authors. And what I find also interesting is that in Plovdiv, and probably Mark has been there, in the center of the city, you can see a shofar that reminds of a train with Jewish who was prepared to be sent to Poland and was stopped with help of the church, with help of the Orthodox Church, but also politicians and Bulgarian citizens who found that the Bulgarian Jews were Bulgarian and that's it. So they were saved. And in some other, as I saw in one city that is heavily populated with Muslim population, in one park I saw a stone. This was recent, 3 years ago, with the David star, and it was written from the population of the city to their Jewish friends who left to Israel. So there is a better acceptance of Jewish in Bulgaria than in many other European countries. And I grew up in Bulgaria, and I can tell you that nobody had really, I never had big problems with non-acceptance or anti-Semitism. Different than when I stayed in Belgium for a couple of years, where from time to time you could clearly see that some people really have anti-Semitic understandings. Well, I hope I explained a little bit of Bulgaria and a little bit of my life, and I'm ready to answer questions or whatever necessary.
So one thing that I would like to say is I'm very impressed with not only the history of your origins, but how you have how your life has turned out when you moved to Brazil and all of the things you've done since you left Bulgaria. It just is amazing to me.
Well, you know, I when I look back, I'm quite proud of what I did. But you know, there is no during especially the years that I was active in business, there was no time to think. It was just do it, and you know. So I was rather successful in business. The family business is run now by my kids, my son and my daughter. And I'm a writer now. So I wrote actually four books. And by the way, now I have four grandchildren, not two. I think that I send you a text that is a little older. Now I have four of them, which is a great joy.
So we have several, I don't know if you've looked at the chat, but you are related to Laura Holmes.
Well, yes, we have had some contact, and yeah. Well, it is amazing. I was very much surprised. A couple of years ago, I did a DNA test, and you know, here in Manaus, I'm alone. Have no cousins, no family, and the family of my wife is very big. So I was always the one who had a very small family. At once after the DNA test, I discovered that my family is actually bigger. So, yeah.
So and we have Ray Hassan, who lives in Cape Town, who said he is very interested. And so, Ray, if you have any other questions or anybody else, I'll open it up to questions.
Could you repeat his name, please?
Ray Hassan.
Well, I am actually Hazan. So on my mother's part, and also Behar. So Behar is I discovered that I have so many relatives that I'm really impressed, and I didn't meet them all yet. So
Well, if I wanted to mention to everyone and to you, in case you did not know, that we have several people in our Sephardic family who specialize in genealogy, like Victor Elkanah. And Victor Elkanah's specialty is descendants of the Ottoman Empire. And so if anyone is interested, including yourself, it is very fascinating to me to understand our history, you know, not only the history that you have described, but who are related to, and to have opportunities to go to some of these places. And so because of people like Victor Elkanah, you know, it has opened up my eyes to understand, you know, I have Hassan in my family as well. So maybe we are related.
yes, well, yeah, yes. Well, you know, the some of the Jewish and at least one part of my family, they came from Turkey to a city called from Istanbul to a city called Edirne. This city is still in Turkey, but very close to the Bulgarian border. Then they went to Haskovo in Bulgaria, and then to Sliven, Yambol, Shumen, cities in Bulgaria that are today not very big, but 200 years ago, they were important centers of even some industry at the beginning of the industrial development. And the story is very impressive. Yeah.
So
And then
we have a comment. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Finish.
yeah, go ahead.
We have a comment from Rivka Amato, who is a singer, and she wanted to know if you might be connected to any Jewish Bulgarian musicians who live there. And she also says that her father is from Burgas.
Burgas, yes. Well, I know Burgas rather well. And this is on the Black Sea, of course. You know, Bulgaria, not only the Jewish Bulgarian, but Bulgaria is very good in some classical music. So today in the orchestras around Brazil, but not only Brazil, there are many musicians coming from Bulgaria. In Manaus, there are about 10 of them that I know. And in the rest of Brazil, there are hundreds. Bulgarian, especially classical music, is very strong. And I have friendship with one singer who sings Sephardic music. Maybe somebody of you has heard her name is Fortuna. She is actually from Syria, Syrian Sephardic.
What's her last name?
Fortuna Safdie.
Fortuna Safdie. Safdie. She's very good.
So Jack wanted to know if you happen to know how many Jews there are in Bulgaria and how active are they?
Well, now there are probably about 5,000. There is a club called Shalom, and a big synagogue. The synagogue of Sofia is beautiful. You probably know it. And it was renewed. Is beautiful and is big. It's one of the biggest synagogues in Europe, actually. Plovdiv has two synagogues. One is closed, one is active, and they also have a Jewish center. In Burgas, I don't know, but I have heard of also Jewish club in Varna. Varna is another big city. There is some Jewish life in Ruse. Ruse was the city of the Nobel Prize winner Elia Canetti.
Oh.
Canetti. And so there is active Jewish community. From recently passed away a poet who is considered the best Bulgarian poet in the last 40 years, Valery Petrov. Valery Petrov is not his real name. His family name is Menachem. I remember, but he's Jewish, absolutely. There is another very well-known artist, Angel Wagenstein, who is 97 years old. If you have a chance, look for a film. The name is Stars. This film took second place in the Cannes Film Festival in 1958, I think, and tells the story of a Jewish girl during the war. It's very interesting, this film. But Jews are strong in the Bulgarian culture. Sometimes some of those artists are not any longer Jewish, but they come from Jewish families.
So Laura is asking, how old are the synagogues in Plovdiv?
Oh, a synagogue, one of the synagogues in Plovdiv is the one that I told you that was destroyed and refurbished, is from year 300, the third century. So this is 1800 years old. But the construction that we see today is newer. Is probably it has some 200, 250 years, but it's on the same place where the old synagogue was. The name of the poet is Mevorach, the family Mevorach.
So I'm looking at the chat. Does anyone else have any more questions? So do you want to tell us a little bit about your next book?
Yeah, it is ready. The editor doesn't want to represent it to the market because they say it's not the right time. Because you know, for a book to become a bestseller, this is what editors think of. And my last book I can show you, was for a little while the #1 bestseller in Brazil. This is in English. You can find my books on Amazon. So what I I'm telling this as a real story that is, of course, has some fantasy added, but the story is in 1935. There was a German expedition in the Amazon uh, on a region that today is unbelievably far and very difficult to reach, on the border with French Guiana. And it was officially a scientific expedition. But what calls attention is that they had an airplane with them, a hydroplane, and they had some other very modern and expensive equipment. And besides that, I discovered that there is um, a cemetery in one place there where you can see a big 3 meters, or this is 9 foot or 10 foot high uh, gravestone with swastika, the German sign. And I looked and I said, my God, what the hell is this? And I went after the story. Well, the story was this expedition. Actually, the idea was to study a possible invasion of French Guiana because the Germans wanted to have a base in the Americas. And they, since Germany was friend with, at the time, Brazilian president, they got the permission to go there, and they actually had second intentions. Well, nothing happened after that, and the expedition left in 1938 back to Germany, but funnily, they left a child with an Indian girl there. And I decided to go after and to find the descendant and see what, the story looked interesting. And I went behind it. I found some traces, but nothing that I could be proven. But I tell the story of the hunt behind. They were calling her Alemoa. Aleman is German, huh? Alemoa. And so I went in the footsteps of Alemoa and to discover what the German expedition actually was doing there. And well, the story is interesting. I don't know if I was able to make a good book out of it. In another 4 or 5 months, we will know when it appears in the market, and it will appear also in English on Amazon, and in Bulgarian in Bulgaria. So I'm quite excited. This is another book that was rather popular here in Brazil and in Bulgaria. So if somebody is interested to read, you can find my books on Amazon.
So when was the last time you were in Bulgaria?
In 2019.
2019.
So two years ago, basically, before the virus. And I go to Bulgaria almost every year
Oh.
and spend 10 days there. I have there some friends. Uh, Most are Jewish and very old. And this is opportunity to speak Ladino. And, one is 97 years old, another lady is 95, another is 93. And every time I want to go to some place, I say, well, I have to go to Bulgaria because next year maybe one of them is not going to be there. So this is.
Part of Bulgaria do you go?
I go to Sofia, go to Plovdiv, sometimes Tarnovo, sometimes Burgas or Varna. This part is nice for vacation. The only thing is that in the summer on the Black Sea, it's very crowded. And so I avoid going there in high season. Bulgarian cuisine is very interesting. They have what I think the best salads in the world.
Shopska.
Shopska, yes. And they have lamb, very good lamb. And the cuisine is very, very good.
So you usually go in the spring or the fall?
Yes, most of the time, yes. Winter is not, I don't appreciate cold weather any longer. So, but, and in the summer it's very hot and very crowded. So May is excellent month, September, October, you know.
You were talking about the Rose Festival earlier in the Rose Valley. When have you been? You've been to that where the roses are.
Yes, I was lucky only one time, one of my 10 visits there. It was the week when the roses bloom. And this is something unbelievable. It is a valley. When you enter the valley, normally in a car, and open the window, you can smell, the roses. And it is beautiful anyway to see all these roses, and it's another world.
And the rose oil is worth more than gold in its weight.
Oh yeah, oh yes, oh yes. It is. This rose is only available there, and there is another valley in some place in Turkey. And the whole perfume industry is behind the rose oil. It's very, very expensive, rare, and is a beautiful product.
Well, I hope to see you in Bulgaria sometime. That'd be wonderful.
Well, I hope to see you any place. So it can be in California, or if you come to Brazil, you will be very welcome, or anybody who is listening to us now.
So I want to thank you for sharing your stories with us, and it's inspiring to me, and always interesting to find out more about our culture and how we survive, and how we must move on and thrive.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It is always an opportunity, and it's important for us to know our past so we can have a better future.
So
Okay.
have a great day, and thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.